Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
We're reviewing NCAA Week 12, our best evers, our worst evers. I got a couple lumps of coal to give out and some flowers.
What'd you think of the week?
There wasn't as many fun games as usual.
I was thinking the same thing. There were some great matchups and it was entertaining, but nothing, super earth shattering or
No, there was a bunch of teams on a bye, and then one of my worst evers is teams with their cupcake games at this point of the year. There's just a bunch of teams that could have contributed to the slate, but were otherwise just playing practice games. So, anyways, there was a couple of good ones.
Yeah.
So, shall I start?
Please.
Okay. So normally we work backwards. I kind of had four, but I've been trying to lump them together to see if I can get. Anyways, so. The third best thing I saw this week was the Florida Gators. They actually showed up. Now, we are Gator alum, but that was a real game. And the fans don't care that the team isn't having a great season. That was a great atmosphere. And they kicked the crap out of LSU. And I didn't expect DJ Lagway to be starting. I'm not sure I would have necessarily bet against them. I don't think I would have bet them to win, but I might have changed how I bet because we just took LSU. But but that was assuming Lagway wasn't going to start. I had no idea who's going to start. He looked awesome. Yep. So part of this best ever is I also saw an article that Billy Napier got the blessings from the administration that he's around for another year.
Yep.
And I think he deserves it because they could have beat Georgia. They could have beat Tennessee. They did beat LSU. And in this year of the brutal schedule, they could have handled some of the toughest teams on the schedule with injury depleted roster with all the controversy. Is he going to be around or not? He's got them fighting big time. Like, this team is not quitting at all.
No, so and you're right about
the serious effort.
Yeah, you're right about the fans, right? That was something that they can be fickle, especially when they're not competing for SEC championships, which they're not this year. But they've got a shot at a bowl game now, which is big. They could finish over their projected win total, which is big. And you're right. The fact that that environment was really good, and it didn't, and it's not like that with other teams that are, with some fan bases, and when they're not doing as well, it can get quiet or boos. You know what I mean? And it was not like that. And you're right about Lagway too. It really feels like he's either getting comfortable in the offense. It's probably a combination of things, comfortable in the offense, but they're really playing to his strengths too. It's sort of getting the ball out quickly. He's got a great deep ball, or like he can put touch on the ball really well.
Yeah.
So
So
that was no, you're absolutely right. It was great to see that.
Yeah, he played really well. The defense played. You know what? Even though LSU had way more time of possession, Florida they just looked like the better team pretty much throughout the whole game.
Yeah, on offense and defense, right? Which is saying something.
And the defense was really controlling that game. Again, sounds odd to say when the other team's completely controlling time of possession. And you're right, Lagway, the future, what I took away from this is the future's kind of bright. If they just if this is Napier's concept and his construction, give him a couple more years. If that's a sample of what a full strength team with Lagway at the helm, if that's what that can be, that's competitive in the SEC for sure.
You're right about the future, because they're their Lagway's a freshman. One of their running backs was a freshman, the 13, who looks really good. Some of the defensive players are freshmen. So you're absolutely right. It's an SEC. It was the first time in probably over a year that it looked like an SEC competitive team.
Yeah. And in many times in the last few years against LSU, like, you can kind of look at many teams in the SEC, including Florida, and think, oh man, to a man, they just have more horses than we do. Yeah. Yesterday, you could say it looked the reverse. It's like, oh, there's just more better players on Florida. Like, this LSU team can't compete on this field right now. It's kind of how it looked.
Yeah.
So we'll get into there's some coal to go with this game too, but for now, let's just focus on the Florida's having a good game. And I think I got them up there. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. They're
sure
up there somewhere. So there you go. All right. So that was the third best thing I saw.
Yeah. Good one. So the third best thing I saw are teams that I didn't anticipate really enjoying looking, like at the beginning of the season, I didn't anticipate that I would enjoy watching these teams as much as I do. But it's I've got Georgia, Tennessee, and Boston College, which is hence why we've got the shirt on today.
Yep.
It was Tennessee's is that the Georgia Tennessee game was great. It was very competitive. It was good defense. You had to execute really well to move the ball in offense. And there's just some absolute monsters on the field in terms of defensive players and defensive tackles and linebackers and how much distance they can cover and really play defense well. So I thought that was great. And Boston College, they've lost a bunch of games. They're to the second string quarterback, but I really like watching them play. Like, they're coached really well. They're in the right position. I like the offense that they run. And when your bets go 4-8 on the week and Boston College covers so that you get that fourth win, that they get the t-shirt. So that's why I'm wearing it today.
Yeah, and like I said before, I think O'Brien's the right marriage with Boston College.
Oh, it looks like it's a great fit right now.
That's going to work long term. They were our early season wagon. They were really fun to watch. Now, I might give out a lump of coal right here, even though we're in the best section. Okay, I don't want to give this right to a person. It's to the concept.
Okay.
Thomas Castellanos got benched, and now he's immediately in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
That's the thing now in college.
Yes.
And I think that's bad for college.
Yep.
The idea that players when they don't get their way, they're gone and they don't stick around and they don't see it through to the end. And that's, I understand from a player standpoint, they're like, oh, I don't want to sit on the bench if I'm never going to play again. And there's an opportunity somewhere else. Of course, I'm going to go somewhere else. But there's something off about it that within hours of being benched, he's already gone.
Yeah.
There's a mercenary nature to it. Guys that age, they just don't have emotional control. And and also it's not like in the NFL where you have a contract. Like you can't just leave a team anytime you feel like it. You're like this is adult big boy stuff now. When there's money involved, you have to start acting like an adult, and they're still acting like petulant kids. And that's got to get cleaned up. And I can see now why Saban was out. Why Harbaugh just forget this. These kids are just mercenaries, but they don't have the maturity to know how to handle that. And also the system's not designed with any sort of collective bargaining or any contractual setup where, I mean, coaches have a contract. You have to buy them out. Players, players right now can function with no consequences. And that's the worst thing you can do to an 18-year-old is give them what seems like leverage with no consequences because they don't know how to handle it.
No, you're right. And it was, what wasn't good was when coaches could come and go as they wanted, take jobs, leave jobs, and players were stuck somewhere for 4 years. And if they transferred, they had to sit out a year for, a 3 or 4 year career. That's brutal. So that had to change. So the transfer portal is good. What should happen is they should limit the time frame for the transfer portal so that you can't just only once a year or twice a year could there be a transfer portal, because that's the being able to come and go as you want or quit when you want doesn't seem right either. And this goes back to, we've talked about this before, the whole point about football and college sports and athletics in general is that it's sort of it gets you ready for life. It's, you try hard and good things will come, and developing and being patient and accountability and a lot of stuff that sports teaches. And it's, and this isn't it, right? Where like you said, I didn't get my way, I'm going to flip the Monopoly board and I'm out of here kind of thing. And it's
teaching them the reverse of how the rest of their life's really going to go. Even for the few who make it to the NFL, they can't do this bullshit in the NFL.
No, exactly.
It's if they show up thinking that's how it's going to go, people are like, get out of here. Like, just no.
Exactly.
It's just
that sucks.
Yeah. I don't mean to.
But the backup, I like the backup, and same thing with the UNLV guy too, right? That happened too. Was
I mean, it's going to continue happening until they get some sort of something in place where it holds them accountable to the commitment they made. Because right now, the commitments are paper thin. They're not. They aren't commitments. It's like, I'm going to stick around for as long as this is good for me, and then I'm out.
Yeah,
that's it. So that's bad. Anyways, all right. The second best thing I saw was Colorado's defense. 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 turnovers, 3 of them picks. And they held Utah to 31 yards rushing,
Yeah, that
This
was the
is
key number for me because
yeah,
Utah, like that, Utah, Whittingham is built that team on amazing defense and running the ball. Like, and it had been like that for a long time.
and
He's
neither
been there
happened.
exactly, and so that is really impressive. That was actually my number one thing.
All right, well, let's
Was
just dig
there,
into this one. Yeah.
yeah, but it's like because that's I can't believe the transformation, not only from last year, but from the beginning of this year. Like their offense and defensive line play is so much better.
Mhm.
And Utah was limited, like they don't have not all their starters, and Rising, who's seems like he's 41 years old, wasn't playing anymore and stuff like, but still they manhandled them, that was
I
impressive.
really want to
So,
see a do-over with Nebraska.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
if this yesterday's team shows up against Nebraska, I think it's a different story.
very true.
Because that game they look like they didn't belong on the field at all. But
Yeah.
they look like, I think it's pretty safe to say they're the best team in the Big 12 at this point. Just
Well,
nobody. I
yeah,
mean, because they're putting in. First of all, I think it's the best offense in the Big 12.
mm-hmm.
Regardless if they can run the ball, however they're working with what they have, they can just overwhelm people within however they work. Obviously, they don't run the ball well, but it doesn't seem to matter. And they're deep with a defense to go with it.
Yeah, the difference between like they're not a good running team, but you can run enough that what makes you respect it, and because if you're just one dimensional, that won't work.
Mhm.
But so they run enough, they're effective enough running it that it opens stuff up for the passing, and they can't just key on the passing. So that's the important thing, and they do a good job with it. Like it's not just dives up the middle, like it's a lot of those quick screen things or things that which is sort of an extension of the running game. But but that's the no, like they're being able to the run the defense where Colorado's playing someone, they have to respect the run, which is that's all you need, because then it allows you to do what you want on offense. So
And
yeah,
they score enough that they seem to pull teams into a Colorado game now. They're kind of force you into a track
good
meet.
point.
Especially if they're stopping the run consistently, you're stuck in a track meet with them, which they're going to win track meet games.
Yep. No, and that was something we thought going in, which is why we bet the over. And Colorado had it just on their own.
Yeah.
So that was
Oh yeah,
that was impressive.
That's another best ever that we hit that over.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, anyways, that's the second best thing I saw.
All right. So the second best thing I saw was the Florida game. So we're in
Yeah.
pretty good lockstep here. The only other thing I would add to our Florida discussion was that you had a really good point about the young people being really good, and like you said, the defense, that was something that's been another significant improvement from the beginning of the year. Like that, they had 8 sacks, which was significant, and they looked like, and the people that they had pass rushing looked awesome. So that was I haven't seen that in a while either. So that was great. But no, and Lagway, he's managing the offense pretty well. Like I think he's already improved from the beginning of the season, which is really saying something. Yeah. So
and his the way he throws the deep ball as he's breaking out of the pocket, like kind of off script, as they would say, he reminds me of peak Russell Wilson. Getting out of the pocket, but then throwing absolute dimes on the run downfield, like long ones too, 30, 40 yards of air on the ball, not like short pass and then the receiver does all the work. If this is what he's going to turn into, or a sample of how he's going to be, like that's now, I mean, that's why he was a 5-star, I guess, because he's got all the pieces right there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was no, and I was just looking at some of the roster stuff, but I really like Jaden Baum. The running back who's 13. He looks amazing, and he's a freshman. So
and were they still missing all of their top cornerbacks in this game?
Oh yeah,
too?
they got a couple people back, but it was limited.
Well, that's a great example of depth. I think this also might mean indictment of LSU. They're just not that good.
Yeah, I mean yes, like that, but it looked like a real SEC game. So it's not. It wasn't like Florida State against Notre Dame.
And that's a big deal because they got beat up real bad last week.
Yeah, exactly.
And this week they looked totally different.
And you said it. It was the fact that how hard the team is playing now, considering what happened, says a lot, because there's like Florida State. I keep using them as an example, but there was like they are not playing well, and it's obvious the change in culture with that team. So
there's 3 games that stick out to me for the Gators. It's the Georgia game, the Tennessee game, and this one where they showed up every bit ready to finish to play the full game, and they were max effort the whole game long. And that, I think all of that leads to Napier getting the blessing to stay, because he's got them playing. They're not checking out on him. They're the reverse. They're all in on him.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely no.
All right, so the number one best thing I saw was Georgia and Carson Beck bouncing back. So Carson Beck was definitely maligned coming into this game. I bet against him last week and it worked. And you were like, your sentiment was, how could he couldn't possibly have another bad game. And my sentiment was, there's no reason to think he won't have another bad game. Now, it wasn't a 3-interception game, but he had a pick and a fumble, which maybe you can't blame the fumble on him, but it wasn't great. And they needed him to be great to beat Ole Miss. And instead they got their doors blown off. And maybe they couldn't beat him regardless, but that was starting to make it look like Georgia just, they're not really in the game or in the mix this year. And then they show up, and this was a championship looking team led by Beck, who had to prove it. And once again, he had what to me peaked as the back-breaking play of the whole game, when I think it was a 3rd down and he scrambled for the 1st down. And it was just a gritty, tough, like running back style run. And he knew he was going to get hit hard, but he got the yards needed. And that just looked like the moment in the game where he kind of decided, we're winning this game. And that was a microcosm of the whole game. He was on point. He was throwing darts. He looked really good. And then the Georgia defense completely shut them down in the second half. Like, this looked like a heavyweight fight in the first half. And then in the second half, it was just Georgia taking over. And ironically, I've been calling Georgia a half a game team. And they did it again, except for, instead of a bad half and then finally showing up, they had a good half and a championship half. And if they're going to go good and championship, that you can't beat them. Yeah. But they still didn't go championship all 4 quarters. But you got to give Tennessee's a good team.
Yep, really good team. So no, you're absolutely right. It was a good bounce back from Beck. Like, this is where they needed him to win the game. Like, he had 347 yards passing and 2 TDs. And if he didn't have a good game, they weren't going to win. No. So there were still times, like you said, he threw a pick and a fumble, and it just didn't look great. But like, it was a championship effort, like you said. So
this and that they beat them on the offensive and defensive lines, as you would expect Georgia to. It's not like they ran a lot, but he was on point. And Tennessee's defensive line coming into this game was kind of the unit I was really looking, because that's a dominant unit all year. And Georgia completely handled them for most of the game. And because Beck was never getting pressured. He was just back there. And as the game wore on, it seemed like they were getting even less pressure on him, to the point where, oh my goodness, this is it. The Georgia's offensive line finally showed up, and this is how the game's progressing here. They're getting stronger, it looked like, in the lines.
Yeah, I pushed back a little bit. I thought the Tennessee defensive line looked pretty good, and they held them to like 106 yards rushing total as a team. So I thought that was pretty good. The reason why
Georgia's not a good rushing team. I'm more talking about the pressure on Beck.
Yeah, fair enough. That was
yeah. So anyways, that was good for them. They're in the mix. Now they look that kind of performance can win it all. That type of team right there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, so the number one best thing we already talked about was the Colorado game. That was the one that I had too, because I thought that was great. So yeah,
and they control their own destiny now. Colorado's win out and they're in the championship game, which they don't really. I don't see who's going to stop them now. If they put in those kind of performances, they're going to the Big 12 championship game. Well, and the crazy thing is, they can get into the playoffs.
I know. Well, and that was bye. And if I don't know if you remember, but beginning of the season, Sanders mentioned playoffs at one point, like at either the Big 12 media day or something like that. And everyone was like, oh, okay. Yeah, right. Just pump the brakes a little bit. But
is he already coach of the year? He must be.
Man, it's got to, I don't know who would really, maybe the BYU guy, but I mean, like it's there's only a handful of people that are, he's got to be up there. So it's crazy that there's talk of him going to the Dallas Cowboys and stuff.
No, right? Stay here.
I know.
Here.
Yeah,
man. Oh well, I mean, good for them. That I don't.
Yes.
No one saw this. The only person that saw
Nope.
this coming is Dion.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the
And
worst.
Warren Sapp with a mohawk. That's
We
one of the
love
best
it.
things. That's one of the
Love
best
it.
things I saw in
Yeah,
college football this
that's
weekend.
perpetually the best thing. Warren Sapp
Yeah.
and the Mohawk. All right, let's move on to the worst here.
Yep.
So number 3, I already mentioned it. SEC with their cupcake games here in week 12 or whatever it is. It's just pathetic. What are you doing? Like I guess it's all about this money for the smaller school, but not now. Not the way this is a television product. The reason you have all that money is because of TV, and then you basically give your fans and everyone the middle finger with these BS games right in the middle of the season. If you have to pad your stupid record, do it at the beginning. And then I remember Saban complaining that the fans weren't showing up, but fans aren't going to show up for this garbage.
No.
So
no.
Bama played Mercer, Auburn
Yep.
played UL Monroe, A&M played New Mexico State, Kentucky played Murray State. I don't know if other SEC teams are going to continue with this nonsense next week. Again, they're only playing 8 conference games instead of 9. So that's one thing that, grow up. And then the second thing is just stop it with this shit. If you're going to do it at the very first game of the season. But these are practice games. Don't put a practice game at week 12.
Well, what I don't like about it either is that it's not a bye and it's not like a conference game. So it's something in the middle. So it's still a game, but not really. But people get injured and stuff, like you want to get up as fast as you can, get a lead so that you can rest everybody. So because it's the next week is the real one.
It's not a game.
But as a coach, you have to hey, we got to take these guys serious, because if you ever lost to Louisiana Monroe or something, it'd be a disaster, which, so you have to treat it like a real game, but it isn't, but the injury risk is there, and it sucks. There's nothing good out of it. And I don't even,
the other dumb thing is that this is during the playoff ranking weeks of ranking.
Yeah.
At least if you park these at the beginning of the season, they're not within the committee's decision making, even though it's all an invitational anyway. This is just a bye week. The committee probably just calls this a bye week. So you're just throwing in an extra bye week is what you're doing.
Right. But
I don't know.
But there's a lot of things that don't make it a bye week. Like if people get injured and you can't show stuff on video, and it's,
it's just really, it's a practice game right in the middle of the season. And everyone knows it.
There's nothing about it that you like.
I think it's terrible.
That's the best way to put it. I hate these games.
I hate these games. Moving on.
Perfect. Yeah. There was, I remember talking to someone once from Louisiana Lafayette when they played LSU, at LSU, because they're both they're in state school, same with Murray State, that's in Kentucky, and I remember talking to someone there, and before the game, I was like, how do you look at this? And she was she's like, oh, we get to go to we get to play in Tiger Stadium. That's a big deal or something. I was like, is that how long are you going to be feeling that? Until you go down 14-0 or so, I don't know how does, but anyway, it was really,
it's not good. I don't like him.
No, don't like it. Okay. So the number 3 worst thing for that happened, about the NCAA this weekend was losing your over-under bet by 0.5 points. I'll tell you that, because that happened to us twice. So
that hurt. That really hurt.
That really hurt. So we had Tennessee, Georgia. We had 48.5 over that. And so finishing up 31-17 is 48. So we lost that by 0.5 points. And then the other one was Washington State, New Mexico. Big total, 72.5. Almost impossible to go over that, you would think.
73. I will offer you 73.
And it's 38,
dying
35
seconds of the game.
Oh, God.
How do they know that? I told Dina, and Dina's like, how do they know? How is that possible?
There was a touchdown with 21 seconds left. New Mexico scored. So just... Yeah. So with this many, betting is so prolific now with so many different companies, and FanDuel, not a sponsor, could be, things like that. And so the idea of finding value, it used to be you could find value in some of the smaller games because there's just less attention and people don't, they don't know as much about it and stuff, but there is not that now. The lines are really well placed, and it's really hard to find value now. And it makes sense because some of the betting podcasts that we've listened to in the past, used to have pretty good records, and a lot of them have losing records now, or like right at 500, because
it's just shocking to me that point total lands within a point or two as often as it does. Now, obviously, we've won a few bets where we blew the point total away by 20 points, so they don't always get it right. No, but it's so, I mean, two of them by 0.5.
Well, and the number of games where it's like we've got the total and the team's driving, and I'm like, okay, I need one thing to happen on this drive, like they need to get a field goal and that's it. And then we, and it's that close. So,
and the absurdity of us winning the BYU point total last week with the way that game went.
Yeah, no, exactly. So
it's I don't know. I guess
yeah,
I don't want to believe that you could actually, if you collected enough data, you could algorithm out the outcome. It seems of any game, even though it hasn't happened yet, you could almost guess.
No, it's exactly a lot of variability. There's still some variability in it, obviously, but like, man, they're not. There's a reason why they do it for a living. Like they're on point. So yeah.
Well, yeah, we didn't. This week wasn't good. A lot of that was my fault. I was getting a little excited for some of the bets. All right, the number 2 worst thing I saw was Oregon's offense.
Oh man!
Now they pulled it out. It was a gritty game, but that is a bad sign moving forward. I don't think Wisconsin's that good. Now, on any given day, a team can really show up. At least Power 5, like legit Power 5 programs, which I would call Wisconsin. I don't expect Oregon to put that type of performance in against a cupcake team, but that I don't know. That to me was more of a statement of Oregon than it was Wisconsin. They're missing some pieces on offense. Their top receivers still out, and I think their second best receiver got injured during this game. I don't know if he finished the game. When you look at the box score, it's not indicative of how low of a scoring game it was for them.
Yeah.
I mean, he did throw a critical pick in the red zone, which could have taken away a touchdown, but still that would have only added 7. I mean, this is a dynamic, supposed to be one of the best offenses in the country. And this was awful. So if moving forward, this is not a good sign if they can put in that bad of a game offensively. Defensively, outstanding. That's the only reason they won this game.
Yeah.
But offensively, man, that is a bad sign given some of the offenses, even in their own conference, that they're going to have to deal with moving forward.
Yeah, I'm chalking this up to like even undefeated teams. Like every really good team has a bit of a dud, or at least a poor showing once in the season.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is. It's traveling across the Wisconsin place they've never played before, conference game. And they were, like you said, they didn't play well, but that's what championship teams do, is find a way to win,
win the clunker.
With a clunker, and the defense put them in a position to win it. Right. So that's what it is, but it was not a, like you said, never a good sign, but like this is the next best thing to losing a game, is a wake up call an undefeated team can have. Right. Yep. So in terms of refocusing going forward, and so they're like, hey guys, remember that one, we don't want that to happen again. They've got a game against Washington coming up, and then it's the Big Ten championship game most likely, right? So that's
and you're right, so they won their clunker and defense travels. Yep. Indiana won their offensive clunker against Michigan, which was essentially this, and then Ohio State won theirs against Nebraska. So if you want to stay in conference, all 3 of the top teams in the conference had a clunker, and it all looked like this. The scoring was way down. Their defense basically won it for them. So I guess Oregon just held serve on their clunker in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so the number 2 worst thing that I saw in college this weekend, it was just a couple of disappointing losses. So it was Navy and Kansas State. I was really looking forward to either like a Navy Army like championship game in the American Athletic Conference, and the Army Navy game, coming up. But I thought that would have been cool, but they shut Navy out, and it was the first shutout Tulane's had in forever. So that felt terrible. It was a pretty bad exclamation point for what was a good season for them. And then same with Kansas State. I was really on Kansas State early, in terms of being in the mix for the Big 12. I thought it was a really good team, like someone you didn't want to play in the Big 12 championship game, but they pretty much have no shot of that now, because there's two
Now they've
teams
eliminated
with,
themselves.
yeah, two teams with 2 losses ahead of them, and then plus BYU and Colorado now are both 6-1. So that'd be pretty impossible to change that. But it's when Kansas State's playing well, I really like watching them. So that was just disappointing.
Yeah, no, I agree. That made the cutting room floor on my worst ever. So I figured you might jump in there with that.
Yeah.
It's just too bad. They are a good team, but man, what's that, 2 losses in a row that basically take them right out of the mix. There's just really no way for them to get in.
No, and it's how they look too. Like they didn't like when they beat Arizona 31-7 and they beat Tulane like 34-27 and beat Oklahoma State 42-20, and they beat Colorado 31-28.
I was just about to say,
like
maybe their signature win is beating Colorado now.
Yeah, pretty much now, right? But then lose to Houston 24-19 and then Arizona State 24-14. It's just crazy. So anyway.
But on the flip side, Arizona State, well, we'll get to them later.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. My number one worst thing was the end of the BYU game and how they lost with the punt off of his helmet. You see this?
That's my number one worst thing too.
So okay, right. So they get the pooch punt, and then the player just doesn't know the ball's coming, hits him in the helmet. Kansas
hits him in like the face. Like I feel like he was looking at it.
Nah,
too.
Hit him in the back. No, if you rewatch it,
right.
he's just on his guy.
I thought he was looking at the receiver and it like
hit him in the back. He had no idea it was coming.
Okay.
And I mean, Kansas recovers on the 2-yard line and scores a touchdown, and that's essentially the game.
It hit the guy in the helmet, but then the other BYU guy was in it, landed right on it.
Bounced off his hands. Now, obviously, everything's going fast. It's always hard to recover a loose ball. But what a lousy way to end for the perfect season to end, or the undefeated season to end. I'm not saying they were deserved to have an undefeated season, but it ends like that. That was such an awful way for it to end. Also, to add disappointment to it, they were 4th and goal inside the 10.
Yep.
And then they take a false start to push them back.
Yeah.
Again, so my notes say a terrible ending to the undefeated season with the punt off the helmet and then the false start. You just can't false start there. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get it, but you just made it next to impossible by false starting. Well, and that just sucked for this storybook season. That doesn't mean, they're still can make the Big 12 championship game. Yep. They only have one conference loss.
Yes.
It's just they could have won this game. It's not like they were undeserving of winning, and it's just so unfortunate. The helmet bounce punt thing was just awful.
Yeah. No, it's a 9-0 team losing to a 4-5 team or a 3-6 team or what, that sucked. That's the difference between like BYU was ranked 6 and Oregon was ranked number 1, but Oregon got it done when they needed to, and BYU had a chance and didn't get it done. And it really feels like there's a big distance between 1 and 6. Or even like 2 and 6 and 3 and 6 now, right? Because that looked terrible. And and the false start, what drove me nuts about that, I watched every snap of this game, and when BYU is on offense, it is an absolute library there. You can hear a pin drop because there's no alcohol served at that stadium. Road teams don't travel well. No one's going to Provo for a good time. I don't want to, Provo's beautiful and there's a lot of mountains and you should definitely go to Utah. But no, rowdy Kansas fans aren't going to Provo to it's not like the Georgia game where there was a big section of Tennessee there and you could hear them when Georgia was on offense. There is no one at it is whisper quiet when they're on offense. And so to get a false start with that is ridiculous. So that's what made it extra frustrating.
And of all times, on the your last chance, you false start to make it next to him. God, that was frustrating. Yeah, so frustrating.
No, that sucked because I liked when they were playing well. Like they looked like a good team, but that was. I mean,
they can bounce back. I listened to a couple of Wise Guy podcasts, and one of them said, based on their metrics, BYU. I guess they have metrics for lucky plays, plays that can be 50-50.
Whoopsie daisy play too.
Yeah, so or like turnovers or balls bouncing away that works better for you. Just I don't know what the exact metrics are, but they do have metrics for what is a luck factor. And they said BYU is has been one of the luckiest teams all year.
Yeah, I
Like
could
you
see
fumble
that.
the ball, but you recover it yourself.
Yeah.
And then Kansas has been one of the most unlucky teams, and then that luck caught up with them right here.
Yeah.
It just
No.
all the punt off the helmet. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, they're losing, and his prophecy of luck. That's it. It's right there.
Yeah. No, it was really rough, and it was. I would have. Now I want BYU to lose again if they have another conference games. I'd like to see Arizona State and Colorado in the Big 12 championship. Like that's what I'd like to see. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
speaking of that, you want to move on to coal and flowers?
let's do it.
So I got one lump of coal. It's for Brian Kelly and
Ooh.
LSU. First of
Okay.
all, there's this little controversy. Brian Kelly yelling at one of his players, and one of his players yelling at him.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's losing control there, or if his players are getting a little too up on themselves, and you got to listen to the coach. I'm fearing that the people at LSU are going to start to think, oh, here we go. Brian Kelly's a small game Brian. Like he can't win the big game either. He's kind of like a James Franklin. Notre Dame is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And now he's just doing it to us at LSU. I mean, with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, can't get anywhere with this guy. Now it's LSU. How are we not performing? And you play down to Florida. I can just see this again. I'm speaking in terms of what I think maybe the fans and people around LSU are looking at him saying, oh, we don't have the right coach. This isn't the right coach. So that a lump of coal just for that sideline interaction when it's caught on TV and it's just a bad look. And then another lump of coal for LSU fumbling the ball twice on the same play.
Yeah.
Nussmeier gets sacked, fumbled. His offensive tackle, I think, picks it up, runs, not covering 2 points, fumbles again, and then Florida recovers. And to me, that was a microcosm. And then the thing on the sideline of the dysfunction of LSU right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this concept of doing less with more. Like this is LSU. This should be a top 5 team almost every year. And is the sentiment turning in LSU that, oh, we have a coach who's going to do less with more? Like he's not bringing up. This isn't turning into a Joe Burrow type of team. This is falling to a team that should be better than this. And it's his fault. I'm not saying it is, but I think people can get impatient pretty quickly with how awful the defense has looked. You've squandered a Heisman caliber quarterback, and now this season's really just sort of unraveled on you, where no one in the SEC really looks that good. Like no one's the true dominant team like they've used to be.
And I mean, the only other thing I'd add to that is that the LSU is going to have a few players drafted the NFL. Like, so it's not like they have a bad
both
roster.
Offensive tackle, lots of players are going to the NFL off this
so
team.
like that. So that's the part that's, talent wise, they're there. And so that also makes it a real concern for coaching. I've only ever seen in my, professional life, I've only ever seen one player with a head coach start to yell at each other in front of players. And it was with an OHL team in Brampton. And it was when it was in the playoffs when they weren't doing well. And it was a really interesting reaction because it was at first I was sort of like, this is a bad look. Like, what the hell is happening? But everyone sort of handled it reasonably well because they sort of looked at it as like everyone's frustrated. Like everyone knows we should be playing better. Like, and those, like it was the captain and the head coach yelling at each other. And like, they know they should be playing, like the captain's not happy. The head coach isn't happy. And so like, they're both going to yell because they both really want this to be going better, So like but at the end of the day, with when you have 65 guys on a football team, this was different because in hockey, I don't know if there's less players, so you can have a bit better relationship or something. But this just looked like a middle-aged man yelling at a 20-year-old or so, like that's why it didn't have the same feel to it but I don't know.
And on national television, it's just, you got to know that that's going to get captured and it's not going to look good.
No, for sure.
And anyways, I mean, obviously he's the coach and he can coach them however he wants. And we don't know if that's a completely already accepted style of coaching, but I don't know, I guess it's just a bad look overlaid on that game where they, within 10 minutes of that game, I thought, oh, Florida's going to win. And I never think that about Florida lately, but they were just the better team and they were on it.
Yeah, it's the first time Florida beat LSU in like 5 years or last 5 times or
5
something.
or 6 years.
It's a big deal.
Oh, you got some flowers?
Kyle McCord. for Syracuse, had a good game. So it's like I was on Syracuse for a bit. I was off
Yeah, you were.
now recently, but good to see him having another good game. And also flowers for Stanford. This is more of a call for Louisville because
I was just going to say I'm giving Louisville the call for that one.
but I'll give the flowers to Stanford because it talking about, again, like 18 to 20-year-olds with a team in a season that doesn't mean, they were 2-7, and no one expected them to win, and so to still be fighting in the fourth quarter and to be able to score twice late, to win that was, good for them.
I wonder if this is indicative of the travel and going to a kind of a ho-hum stadium. Yeah. I wonder if that's part of it. I mean,
totally.
Louisville had an outside shot. They needed chaos, but they had an outside shot, I think, at the ACC championship if they won this. Yeah. And a bunch of teams fumbled their way through the end here. And then they just blew it on a game that should have been a win. It just should have been.
Yeah. Louisville's up 35-21 in the fourth quarter. And then it's Stanford touchdown with 6 minutes to go. Stanford touchdown with 45 seconds to go. Stanford field goal with no time left. That is ridiculous.
An epic collapse. That's just an epic collapse to knock yourself out of the threat of a chance you had at your championship game. And you beat Clemson. You've got a tie break.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't even know if they can catch Clemson, but the point is you can beat a top team in your conference, and then you just blew it.
There's another really good win probability chart. Because Louisville was like 100, and then it's just a straight line down. And
you love the chart. Yeah.
I do. It's just because it really gives a good reflection of, what it would have felt like watching the game. So,
all right. Well, my flowers. And now we're going to arrive at my wagon right here.
Oh yeah.
Lenora Sellers. Is this the best player in college? 21 for 30, 353, 5 TDs.
Yeah. No,
there's this guy. He's gonna be in the Heisman conversation in the next 2 years for sure.
Yeah,
if he continues to develop.
Yeah, and it's the point too where like no one wants to play South Carolina now. You know what I mean? Like, and this is another team that's really improved over the course of the season. Oh yeah. And so they don't have any conference games left, which is too bad because they just play Wofford next week, and then Clemson, which is all of a sudden going to have some important things where they finish up.
Where is that game?
At Clemson. Yeah. So, but still good. That should be be a competitive game. So,
I think.
Carolina, here's another call.
I think SC should be the favorite in that.
Yeah, probably right. Sorry, another call before I forget is the Pittsburgh last minute run defense. What the hell? They made Clay Klubnik look like what was it?
Fran Tarkenton, Lamar Jackson.
Made him look like Lamar Jackson. Like it, the safety. What's so bad about that is that Pittsburgh, there's a really good defensive team. Like they held Clemson in check like the whole game, but it's a 50-yard QB run at the end where he ran away from a safety. I'm like, how does that?
You know
happen?
What? He's good for one of those every couple of games.
Still, but I don't.
I'm not saying he's good. I think Klubnik is just not that good.
Yeah, but I don't.
But throughout the season, every couple of games, it'll pop up on the highlight reel of him running for 50 yards. Yeah, maybe he just kind of senses when I've got room here, and he's faster than anyone thinks.
Having when it's man defense and people have their back turned and then you run and there's like no one around you or something. That's one thing, but it was it wasn't like that for this, and he ran away from the safety like that. I
think he's quicker than anyone thinks, and then they take the wrong angle and it's already too late.
That's probably a good point.
So all right. Mateo Uiagalelei, the interception to seal the game for Oregon. Now it was a deflection, but in the chaos of a defensive lineman then looking up in the air and then catching the ball in a shaky game like that, where I would have. I wouldn't have been surprised if Wisconsin drove down and tied the game up at that moment, just because of how the game was going. They were just not putting this team away. That sealed the game for Oregon, and it was kind of like the exclamation point or the cherry on top that the defense really was the thing that won this game for them. And it was fitting that him having to be their best defensive player in the absence of their actual best defensive player, which is his counterpart on the other the other defensive end.
Mhm.
It was just fitting that he stepped up. He's the one who got the interception. It's the statement that our defense is good enough with or without him.
Yeah.
So
No,
good for him.
that's a really good Flowers, because you're right. It was the defense that won that game for them, and so to finish with a defensive lineman interception is really, that's a nice bouquet of flowers for that guy.
Yep. Yep. And if his name escapes me, but they're stud other defensive linemen. If he comes back, if they get him plus their star receiver back at full power, this team is really, really good.
Yeah.
Do you have any more? I've got a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just Arizona State actually now controls their own destiny in the Big 12.
That's
if
awesome.
they win out, they go into
big
the
game
championship
against BYU next week, and that's awesome. And
huge game.
Yeah, and Scadaboo is really great. So it's and the coach looks like he's about 16 years old.
I mean, if you're not watching them, go back and watch their game. This is a fun team to watch. I've heard some people say that that's not a real good football culture. I don't know. The crowd looks like that's a pretty good crowd at their home games.
And they've got some great unis and clothing. I love the pitchfork. And
people quickly forget Jaden Daniels was there.
Yeah.
And he was good there.
Yep.
This team can get talent. And I mean, too bad they couldn't keep him. But this good for them. They're just kind of crept up on everyone out of nowhere. Now, again, they control they've passed Iowa State, who I also have flowers for, but Arizona State is one of the 3 teams, I think, in the Big 12 who actually can control their way into the final game.
Yeah. Really good party school with an 8-2 football team. So that's pretty sweet ride.
Do you have more? I got one more.
Go ahead.
Just Iowa State bouncing back. Now they're still alive for the Big 12 championship game, but they do need help. They need some chaos in front of them.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've hung in there and they're still alive is a big deal, because it's really 3 teams above them and then them, I think, is kind of how it goes. And now they have to win out. They need help, but they're hanging on by a thread. But up until just 2 weeks ago, they were in the driver's seat here. It was them and BYU. Now it's Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, and them kind of in the window looking in. And that's because Arizona State and BYU have next week, one of the 2 of them moves in with Colorado as the top 2.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That is if you told me in the beginning of the season, I'd be pretty jacked up for the BYU Arizona State game, I would have called you a liar to your face. But that's going to be good.
Is that one in Arizona, at Arizona State?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. That's going to be big time.
Let me just confirm that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
they're hosting BYU. Yeah, 3:30 on ESPN.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, well, that's all I got for this week.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right, well, that was a good week. This might be the first week where I think the NFL might compete and
Look at you go.
might win the week.
Maybe
over
just because
college.
our bets went 4-8. So if our NFL bets get a winning record, then you might be right.
We've never qualified that we're picking weeks based on purely entertainment and or
cash money.
If our bets cash in, and they really didn't work out this week in college. All right. Well, that's it for the college review, and stick around for our NFL review in a day or 2. I think tomorrow. Yep.
Yep.
All right. We'll catch you later.